Since the way Jesus sees me looks a whole lot better than how I can be without Jesus, I'm not going to cater to the wrong side of my life. That flesh life is not going to hold me. I'm going to walk after the Spirit and not after the flesh. Saul didn't get that revelation. He struggled with remaining as he really was before he was changed. This gentleman suffered so much from his own inability to give credit. I'm going to say this again before I complete the sentence. He lacked the ability because of his own thinking to not give God credit for the change that took place in his life. Brothers and sisters, we sometimes do the exact same thing. We do not get, see, and this is the thing about worshiping and praising the Lord in your mouth and in your hands. When you start to believe what you say, you live what you say. But when you just say it and you don't believe it, you don't live it. And the living is to complement the speaking. But oftentimes you got to start the speaking to get the living to line up with it. Because a lot of times we find ourselves, see, we're made up of thinking faculties that are controlled and dominated more than you realize by what you see, what you hear, and all of these things that come into our eyes and into our ears leave an impression on our mind. They leave a serious impression on our mind. And what we have to understand is Saul was a byproduct of a misunderstanding about the power of God. And some of us are byproducts of misunderstanding the power of God. The power of God has the ability to do what you can't do for yourself. And what you have to recognize is, don't think it's going to happen for yourself, but just believe that since God says you're changed, it is so. Saul did not spend time believing that. He carried on to the point, first of all, he did a lot of things. He became very insensitive to the people. He became very cold. He became very calculating. He actually began to enjoy wars and fighting against people to win battles and try to prove himself to be more than what he was. And when you go back and even reread, and I reread it, I went back to reread, Lord, what was going on with him even and Jonathan? If you look, don't read it now, but when you go home, read chapter 14. In chapter 14, you'll see that they went out to battle, and Saul put out a decree. In that decree, he told everybody that you're not to eat till we win the battle. Now, that left everybody very weak and depleted. His son Jonathan didn't hear the decree. Jonathan was out doing battle, and Jonathan was winning left and right because Jonathan took his little stick and got him some little honey off of somewhere and got a little honey in his system, and he got some strength. With that strength, he just battled on. Well, as time progressed, they told Jonathan, your dad said nobody was supposed to eat nothing. But you have to understand something. Saul's attitude had become now one where he was so arrogant and so uppity that you couldn't deal with him anymore. He even wanted his own son killed because he didn't follow his decree. It didn't make him any difference that Jonathan didn't know nothing about it. And Jonathan said, you know, Dad, if we had all eaten, we probably would have been more successful than we were. But you have to understand something. Saul had gotten to a place that you couldn't even reason with him and show him anything because he was so convinced that now that he was where he was, he could do as he pleased and nobody could tell him nothing. Now, that doesn't look like the same person who was hiding in the crowd and really didn't want to be seen to be the king. And I asked the Lord about that too. And I said, you know what, Lord, what's that about? He says, some of us, we go around acting like we don't want to be in power. We act like we don't want to be high and in elevated positions because we hide at the moment because we don't think it should really happen or will ever happen. But God help us if we get it, because ain't nobody going to be able to deal with you because you're going to get beside yourself. The bottom line is sometimes, some of us can't handle elevation and leadership and being in a position of power or financial success or too much success on a job because you become unbearable. That's how Saul was. Then on top of that, Saul did something else. Saul became impatient. In his impatience, because see, Saul got to the point where he wanted everything to happen right now. And isn't that the age we live in? We got church people today that can't wait on God for nothing. I've had to struggle with learning to wait myself. It pays to wait. Saul couldn't wait for Samuel to come and prepare the sacrifice. And so since he felt like the people were losing their momentum and their mindset to work with him, he figured, well, I can't wait on Samuel the prophet, so I'm going to do Samuel's job too, and I'm going to slaughter the sheep and put everything together and do it myself. Samuel finally shows up and tells Saul, you know what? You have just messed up, buddy. You just messed up. You know what you've done? You've put yourself in a position now where God's going to have to put some distance between you and him because what he wanted to do with you, he can't do it now because you're out of control. What's the point? When he changes you, do not think that you can just continue to go as long as you please, doing what you want, and not find yourself having to come to grips with the fact that you're going to maybe feel a distance between you and God. Not that he leaves, but the distance is that you don't cooperate. And when you don't cooperate, it makes you feel like God's not dealing with you anymore. Now, the difference between our day and Saul's day, as I said, Saul had the Spirit of the Lord upon him. You and I who have the Holy Ghost have the Spirit of the Lord in us. He doesn't just jump up and leave us, but our own conduct works upon our mind, and we automatically start to feel like, where is God? And what's happening is, instead of you recognizing that, you know what, Lord, I see that I'm allowing the old me to interfere with the change that you're making in my life, and I'm insisting on doing it my way and thinking that you Frank Sinatra, and in reality, you found out that he didn't live very long. He still had to die. Singing he did it his way didn't keep him around here forever. You can't do it your way. You got to learn. You got to do things God's way. And that's what the people of God have to come to grips with. At some point in time, escalating ahead of things, the Lord actually comes to Samuel because now Saul has gone another level out of his mind. Now, the next mistake Saul makes is he goes and under God's orders now into battle. And the Lord told him to destroy everything, including the king Agag as well. Get rid of all of it. It's all under my idea of something that will do you all no good. Get rid of it. Now Saul's behavior is becoming really more escalated. He starts to lie. This man's whole old nature is really just popping out the woodwork. What